Illinois taxpayers really holding their breath as Governor Pritzker lays out his budget for the state. He delivered his annual State of the State address, once again taking shots at the Trump administration, while Illinois faces a massive budget deficit. Joining me is our very own political correspondent, Paris Schutz, to break this down for us. Good morning, Paris.
Good morning, Natalie. How are you?
Doing good. Okay, so the governor presented a $55.2 billion spending plan with no new taxes. How is this even possible?
Some say it's not possible. And in fact, Republicans are saying, well, it isn't. And Democrats will propose a tax hike before they have to pass this budget by the deadline, May 31st. Now, Pritzker is saying, here's what we did instead of tax hikes. We're going to zero out some funding for certain things, namely health care for undocumented immigrants. Natalie, remember how controversial that program was, and it became very costly providing health coverage for undocumented immigrants. That's about $330 million out of the general revenue fund that's going to be saved there. But the Latino caucus is already pushing back on those cuts. The governor's also saying there's $1.5 billion in extra tax revenue coming into the state because the economy was better than we projected it to be, because receipts are better than we projected to be. So guess what? It's kind of the equivalent of saying, I turned up my couch cushion and I found $1.5 billion.
Wouldn't that be nice? Republicans are attacking the governor, as you just noted, saying spending has increased 37% under his watch. So do they have a point here?
Yeah, of course they have a point. Spending has increased under his watch. Now, some of that spending is inescapable. It's extra pension payments, which are mandatory. It's inflation. It's extra payments into the education system, public education system, with both Republicans and Democrats have supported increased funding, what they call the evidence-based funding model for public education in the state. So that's $350 million increase to all public school systems in the state of Illinois, including CPS. Now, that's far short of the $1 billion that Mayor Brandon Johnson says that CPS needs. So some of these things are inescapable, but yes, there haven't been a whole lot of cuts to areas of spending under Governor Pritzker. A lot of COVID relief money went to fund new programs and new initiatives, and now that money has run out, but those initiatives are still here, so the state has to find ways to fund it. Of course, Republicans want to cut some of those things, but the thing is, going back to math, they're in the super minority. So Democrats can pass this budget without any Republicans on board. But again, right away off the bat, there are Democrats that are not happy with this spending plan, that say it should spend more. Especially, like I said, the Latino caucus saying, well, we're not so sure we want to cut this funding for undocumented health care.
Okay, so let's talk about the city of Chicago now. A vote to pass Chicago's budget. It was put on hold yesterday. It includes a controversial $830 million bond. And zero in on this at home. This would ultimately cost taxpayers in the city of Chicago $2 billion down the road. So, Paris, do you think that will ultimately pass?
It doesn't look like it. I mean, for the moment, this $800 some odd million borrowing plan has been defeated by City Council, and there's been a public campaign by folks that are a little more fiscally moderate to say this is not a good idea. Now, it was going to go to fund things like infrastructure upgrades, streets, bridges, all those things, which the city does need to pay for. But the criticism over this borrowing plan was that, A, the city is way over leveraged in its borrowing right now. So it's like if you have a couple of credit cards and you're deciding you're going to open up a new credit card account. And the thing was, the payments on this were backloaded. So there were no principal payments due on this borrowing for several years. So again, it's like taking out a mortgage and saying, well, you know, I can afford $1 million home here, which we know I can't, because I'm not going to pay any principal on this for several years. But then when I do have to pay, when the bill comes due, it's going to be very expensive. So again, it's kicking the can down the road, making future taxpayers have to pay these huge costs. So it got defeated for the moment.
Okay, so stay tuned with all of that. Paris Schutz, thanks so much.
You bet, Natalie.